The chandelier-lit ballrooms of Manhattan weren't ready, but Africa was one. Under the golden dome of luxury inside the Waldorf Astoria, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio stepped onto the stage like a man auditioning for history. Cameras flashed, crystal glasses clinked, billionaires leaned forward. He was there to project strength, but instead, he sparked something else. Pan-Africanism is a dangerous fantasy, he declared, pausing just long enough to let the words sting. Then came the strike he called out Burkina Faso's president, Ibrahim Traoré, by name. A revolutionary chasing shadows, Rubio said, his voice flat and final. The room stilled. The applause died in midair. What was meant to dazzle had detonated. Some whispered of boldness. Others stared, stunned. But across the Atlantic, in a city most of them had never pronounced, a silence deeper than outrage was already taking shape. Because in Ouagadougou, Africa was not offended, it was awakening. Rubio hadn't just crossed a line, he'd drawn one, and Africa was stepping over it with purpose. While Manhattan swirled with headlines and high society handshakes, Ouagadougou stood still, not with shock, but with calculation. In the dusky quiet of the presidential palace, Ibrahim Traoré watched Rubio's speech again and then again. No flinch, no fury, just stillness, sharp as steel. Around him, aides moved like whispers. But one look from Traoré said it all. This would not be ignored. It would not be answered in haste. It would be engineered. This isn't about insults, he finally said, voice even. This is about who gets to define the future. What followed wasn't retaliation. It was choreography. A war room without weapons. A strategy session where truth replaced bullets. Traoré, sleeves rolled, sat among his young advisors. Notes filled pages, not slogans, not speeches, but history reloaded. We don't need to be louder, he told them. We need to be clearer. This was not just a response. This was New Africa rehearsing its voice. Hashtags bloomed before a single word was spoken. Hashtag Africa Answers. Hashtag New Africa Rising. From Dakar to Dar es Salaam. Students quoted a president they hadn't yet heard. Artists began painting. Poets began posting. The continent was leaning in. The world, for once, began to shift in its seat. Rubio had expected backlash. What he got was momentum. No stage, no flags, no theatrics. Just a desk, a mic, a man with a steady grin and a storm beneath his calm. Ibrahim Traoré didn't mention Marco Rubio. He didn't have to. His words weren't a rebuttal. They were a reckoning. He spoke of empires in erasure, of stolen children and stolen futures, of kings erased from textbooks and tongues cut from generations. But more than that, he spoke of New Africa. Africa is not a burden. It is a blueprint. He laid out a vision of African unity not as a dream, but as destiny, rooted in dignity, powered by self-reliance. And then came the line, if the truth frightens the oppressor, let him hide from our words. No shouts, no fury, just silence so profound it thundered. The video spread like dry fire and wind. Within an hour, 42 languages. Within a day, top headline in 5 continents. Murals appeared overnight. Quotes etched on classroom walls. A continent that had been told to listen was now being listened to. Even Rubio's harshest critics blinked. This wasn't diplomacy. It was direction. And it was just beginning. Then came the real shock. Ibrahim Traoré returned, not to relive the storm, but to build after it. He announced the African Development Fund. No Western banks, no colonial conditions, no fine print masked as aid, just African wealth, African oversight, African futures. We will no longer accept progress wrapped in debt, he said. We will invest in ourselves. Senegal, Ghana, Ethiopia, Nigeria. They didn't just applaud, they signed on. India called. South Korea inquired. Even France blinked. Roads, schools, fiber optics, medical hubs, not talked about, funded, no consultants, no middlemen, no apologies. The world began to whisper a new word: control, not rebellion, not defiance, but design, and design that did not ask for permission. Across the globe, hashtag build from within and hashtag African, self-reliance trended. This wasn't charity. It was chapter one when Rubio tried to hold the line, a polished interview. Sound bites, economic caution, but the mask was cracking. His voice said control. His eyes said cornered. The backlash was global. From student protests at Howard to cafe debates in Paris, the tide turned. Opinion pieces shredded his stance. Senators distanced themselves. Diplomats squirmed. And then, quietly, a headline: "What I Got Wrong About Africa, Marco Rubio." It wasn't a mea culpa, but it was a start. He admitted to framing Africa through a lens of risk, not resolve. He recognized the legitimacy of African unity and the inevitability of new Africa. In Ouagadougou, Traoré read it, folded it, smiled. He's learning, he said, because even power, when listening, becomes something else possible. Africa was never a blank page. It was a silenced one. Now, pen in hand, it writes, Ibrahim Traoré didn't win a fight. He revealed a truth that Africa is no one's project. It is its own author, its own architect, its own answer. Pan-Africanism is no longer theory. It is method, movement, machinery. The African Development Fund isn't a symbol. It's a structure. Schools rising in Ghana, internet cables running through Kenya, solar hubs lit in Mali. No begging, no borrowing, just building. In Washington, analysts revised forecasts. In Paris, old scripts were shelved. In Beijing, quiet respect was noted. This is no rebellion. This is a reset. And as Traoré told students beneath the Sahel sun, our voice is not a reaction. It is a reality. The age of new Africa has begun, not with vengeance, but with vision.